When they came to see us, they had $2.3 million and wanted to know what was financially possible for them to really thrive in retirement. They've worked super hard and wanted to know if their dreams like traveling overseas each year, a full kitchen remodel, and continuing to give charitably were possible. And make sure you stick around towards the end of the video where I'm going to share one tweak that could decrease their potential lifetime tax bill by roughly $500,000. Plus, I'll share a secret weapon you can take advantage of to lower the chances of ever running out of money. Hi there, it's Alex, partner and financial advisor here at One Degree Advisors, and I'm here to help you gain confidence in your retirement. Now, this is the financial plan of James and Emma. Now, I've rounded their portfolio values, changed their names, and removed any identifiable data since this is a real client. They're both age 63, they live here in California, and they successfully launched their kids, and now it was time for them to really focus on themselves. They wanted to retire now and came to us to do two things. Number one, see if retirement was possible and if what they wanted to accomplish was even feasible. And then number two, have a dedicated tax and retirement specialist to manage their finances throughout retirement. They were ready to turn over the keys and didn't want the stress of dealing with it on their own anymore. So let's go into their financials. As we can see, they have about $80,000 at the bank, $600,000 in a brokerage account titled to their family trust. Emma has an IRA of $580,000. James an IRA of $1 million. Emma did have a Roth of about $120,000. And then they also have a home that was worth about $1.15 million. And then they had a small mortgage of about $360,000. Now, as we take a look at their income, they did both have Social Security. Because they were very similar in age, their full retirement age for both of them was 67. And if James decided to collect at his full retirement age at 67, it would have been $37,000 a year. And for Emma, it would be $26,000 per year. Now, even if your numbers aren't exactly like theirs, all the principles we'll be discussing today are universal, and I'm confident you'd be able to apply them to your own situation. Now, being in California, expenses are a bit higher, and they needed about $7,000 a month deposited into the bank account every month to live the life that they wanted. And for James and Emma specifically, they prefer to have that amount of income deposited because it would be more like a paycheck replacement. Rather than itemizing out every expense they may have over their lifetime, like car replacements, gifts to family members, etc., they just prefer to manage their own cash flow like they have their whole lives. Now, separately, they had a mortgage payment as well, and that's what's showing here. What's showing is just principal and interest, but property taxes and homeowners insurance is also accounted for. The other thing is we needed to account for private medical as well because they were 63 and Medicare doesn't kick in until 65. And based upon where they lived, we figured it would be roughly $2,000 a month combined for the both of them to make sure that they had the coverage that they needed until Medicare started at 65. So now when we look at their financial plan that considers things like taxes and inflation, we can see that they are on track to achieve their retirement spending goals. They should have a very comfortable retirement without much need to worry about money. And for many financial advisors, this is where they stop. But as we went through more of our in-depth planning process with them, we uncovered that they really wanted to travel abroad more than they were previously before. Through some planning work, we decided to be about $15,000 a year until age 85. They also wanted to know if they could do things like European trips or if they needed to settle for something closer. Emma also wanted to remodel the kitchen, and it's been something she's wanted to do for a really long time. And she wanted to know if they could go all out and truly make it theirs with top-of-the-line appliances, something that would realistically cost about $100,000, or if they needed to be a little bit more thrifty. And lastly, they both wanted to increase the amount of their charitable giving an extra $1,000 a month on top of what they were already doing. They wanted to know what was possible. Now, as we can see, their plan is still successful, but it clearly doesn't look as good. By age 95, they'd have about $520,000, which sounds like a lot, but that's an inflation adjusted number. In the year 2055, that would be like having, if we do the present value of that, that'd be like having $161,000. Of course, they still have their home equity and Social Security coming in, but for James and Emma, it really didn't give them the security that they wanted. So we went back to the drawing board and prioritized. And after discussing with them, lowering their charitable giving amount was not something that they wanted to do, but honestly, they were okay with doing like the big European vacation every other year. So with that reduced travel expense of just like every other year, we can see that their plan looks honestly a lot better. Now they were projected to have about 1.5 million in portfolio assets at their end of their life at age 95. And again, if we look at the present value of that, that'd be like having roughly $485, almost $500,000 in today's dollars, which they were much more comfortable with. And the reason having a portfolio left over at the end of their lives was important is because neither of them had long-term care insurance, and they wanted to make sure that if either of them needed care, that they wouldn't become a burden to their family or their kids, really that they could maintain their independence and dignity in retirement. They were also okay with using their home equity as a last resort to pay for those expenses if needed. Now, I should mention in all of these projections, we are assuming an annual rate of return in their portfolio of about 6%. And of course, you will never earn a 6% return every single year, right? That is completely unrealistic. Over the long term, it might average to 6%, but year to year, it can be dramatically different. So I want to make it clear, like these types of projections are good for big picture visual illustrations, but they fail to account for real world scenarios. If you've ever seen the projections that use Monte Carlo analysis to tell you have like a 70% chance or an 80% chance of success, what does that even really mean? Does that mean you have a 30% chance of failing and running out of money? Of course, in real life, you wouldn't spend your portfolio at the same level if you saw that you were running on the path of running out of money. But that's what a static linear projection or even Monte Carlo analysis that spits out that percentage, a chance of success or failure, is essentially telling you. So how can we make this better? How can we account for the real world where markets are always changing and unknown? Let's take a look at a more dynamic approach to creating income. Now, we are assuming all the same facts as before, the do most of it plan where they do the kitchen remodel, they increase their giving, but they do about half the annual travel. But now we are taking a more granular look at the income that can actually be created on a monthly basis from the portfolio. We're no longer looking at the big picture and linear projections. So as you can see, it's showing we can take roughly $16,000 a month from the portfolio every single month. And if you're quick at math, you may notice this is a significant chunk of the portfolio, about 8.3%. And you may be thinking to yourself, surely there must be something wrong here because this is way more than the 4% rule that I've heard about. Now, static withdrawal plans like the well-known 4% rule work well for some people because A, it's simple and easy to understand, and B, it doesn't require a lot of ongoing maintenance. If you Google the 4% rule, Schwab's website is one of the first results. As a recap of the rules, it says, quote, you add up all your investments and withdraw 4% of that total during the first year in retirement. And then in subsequent years, you adjust the dollar amount you withdraw to account for inflation. By following this formula, you should have a very high probability of not outliving your money during a 30-year retirement according to the rule. However, there are a few problems with the 4% rule, primarily in the fact that it's very conservative and many people end up with actually more money at the end of their lives than when they started. And for some people, they're okay with that and they're okay being very conservative, but many people aren't and they want more income. But there is a secret weapon you can take advantage of to lower your chances of ever running out of money, and that's being flexible. So instead of being rigid and burying your head in the sand and saying, I will always take 4% adjusted for inflation from my portfolio, regardless of market circumstances, you are instead flexible and willing to adjust your income in retirement. By doing this, you can have a higher starting withdrawal rate. I don't want to understate this. A flexible plan only works if you're willing to adjust your income when, not if, markets decline. Now, as you'll see here, if your portfolio were to drop 29%, your income would need to drop by approximately $540 per month. This is a requirement for this system. Now, just as an example, this is not an investment recommendation. I looked at a simple portfolio of a 60% Vanguard Total World Stock Index Fund and 40% iShares Core US Aggregate Bond Index. And in the past 15 years, the largest decline has been 23%, assuming you rebalanced your portfolio at the end of each year. Now, if we expand that time horizon by 20 years, then we capture the Great Financial Crisis, and the largest decline during that period was 35.5%, and the drawdown lasted nearly 3 years. You would have needed to adjust your income downward. The second thing that must be followed when implementing a retirement income plan like this is lowering portfolio withdrawals once other income kicks in, like Social Security. So for example, if we take a look at their income sources, and I'm gonna adjust the slider so we drop off the kitchen remodel because it kind of makes it hard to see. But once their private medical drops off, then we decrease portfolio withdrawals. And then when Social Security kicks in, we also decrease portfolio withdrawals again. The whole point here is that we keep their total income the same, but we're taking stress off the portfolio as additional income sources begin to kick in. Now, one of the things we offer our viewers is a free retirement readiness report to see if you're on the right path to that wonderful retirement. You provide a few pieces of information and I'll record a video going through the data. From there, if it makes sense for my team to take a look at your investments and retirement plan, we can always do that too. Now, their income plan looks really good, and there are lots of enhancements we made, and I don't have time to go into all of them, but I wanted to show you one simple strategy that is projected to save them over $500,000 in lifetime taxes. So if we take a look at their tax projection, we can see that their taxes are super low in the early years and then really start to ramp up as they age. And that's because of two main reasons. Number one, if we follow the traditional rule of thumb, which is to take income from taxable accounts first, then IRA accounts, and then finally Roth IRA accounts, we end up in a situation where very little tax is generated early on, which can feel like a really good thing early in retirement. But then they've saved those IRA accounts, which are growing tax deferred, and the IRS is not so patiently waiting to take up to 30 to 40% of your account in taxes. And number two, because they're retiring at 63, they're going to go through a period of time before Social Security kicks in, a time when they have no income coming in, so they can be strategic in how they recognize income. These are known as gap years, and they can be a golden planning opportunity if done right. So now if we do some proactive tax planning and convert their IRAs up to the 12% federal bracket, we see that we actually smooth out their taxes. And yes, as you can see, there are more taxes paid earlier, but in doing so, it lessens their total lifetime tax liability by reducing their future required minimum distributions that they have to take later in life, and then taking advantage of their gap year. But the easiest way to see this is to compare apples to apples. If we compare their previous plan to their tax optimized plan, we see that their lifetime total taxes are projected to decrease by roughly $500,000. And of course, with less taxes paid, that means more money in their pocket. Now, I haven't talked about how to invest in retirement to create this type of systematic and reliable income, and I don't have time to get into it in this video, but if that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. If enough people are wanting it, I'll think about putting something together. So when James and Emma came to see us, they knew they had, saved a lot of money, but they weren't sure what they could spend. And afterwards, they were confident they could accomplish nearly everything they wanted, and knew going forward that regardless of what markets threw at them, as long as they were willing to be flexible, they were confident that they would not run out of money. And then the added bonus was all the optimization we were able to do for them with just one of the strategies we proposed, potentially saving them $500,000 in lifetime taxes. Now, if all of this seems a bit overwhelming, we made a quick video on how to create a 3-step retirement plan where my partner Anthony walks you through the basics. You can watch that right here.